Hello geometry students. In this lesson, pretty quick review of circle equations and completing the square. So it says identify the center and the radius of the circle. This is easy. It's change the x and change the y. Find the number that's in parentheses with the x, change it. Find the number that's in parentheses with the y, change it. And then for the radius, don't forget to take the square root. So the center of this is positive 5, negative 1, and the radius is the square root of 4, which is equal to 2. Center and radius. Just change the x, change the y, don't forget to take the square root. Same thing, change the x, change the y, don't forget to take the square root. So on this one, there's no number in parentheses with the x. It's understood to be 0, not 1. Change the number that's with the y. That's going to make this positive 7. And then the radius is unusual because we've never seen it. Square root of 5. I want to know an approximation on that if I were to graph it. That's about 2.24. So this is a circle centered at 0, 7 with a radius of 2.24. It would look something like this. A center here and a radius 2.24. Look at number 3. Going the other direction, it says write the equation of a circle. Well, you remember the equation of a circle comes from the Pythagorean theorem, and it is something squared plus something squared equals something squared. Specifically, x minus something squared plus y minus something squared equals something squared. Make sure you square all three of them. And when you go to plug them in, just plug them in. It's x minus something, y minus something, and then the radius. And that's the answer. You just have to clean it up. So it's x plus 1 squared, y minus 4 squared equals 16. And just to be on the safe side, before you put a box around it, I'm going to check it. This is not necessary, but I think it's helpful if you look at just this. The center of this circle is negative 1, 4. And the radius is the square root of 16, which is 4. I must have done it right. Same thing on this one. Write the equation of a circle. It's x minus something squared plus y minus something squared equals something squared. And then just plug in your x, your y, and your radius. So x minus something, y minus something, and then something squared. And there's your answer. You just need to clean it up. Don't distribute the 2 through. This is just going to be x minus 5. Don't try and square anything. That's the answer. I don't need the 0 here. That means I also don't need the parentheses. And then 17 squared, I believe that's the one that's 289. It is. And just because this might be confusing, I am going to check it. It's not necessary. But if I look at just this, I see that the center is 5, 0, and the radius is the square root of 289, which is 17. Then check. See, 5, 0, 7. I got it right. How about if you just have a picture? It's the same thing. I need the center, and I need the radius. Be careful on this picture. This is actually marked off in units of 2. So the center of this circle is actually negative 4, negative 3. And then the radius, you just get that from the picture. You just have to count blocks. Well, the blocks on this one, remember, they're marked off in units of 2. So you can see the radius 4 times is actually equal to 2. So x minus something squared, y minus something squared equals something squared. Plug that in for the radius, that in for x, and that in for y. X minus something squared, y minus something squared equals something squared. And that's the answer. You just have to clean it up. And once again, before you put a box around it, I always like to check, because to me it's easier going this direction. This is a circle that has a center of change the x, change the y, and a radius of, don't forget to take the square root. So -4, -3, and then radius of 2. I got that one right. Look at this next one. It's a little bit more unusual. I need the center. Looking at the picture, the center is -3, 0. But then the question is asking for the radius, and frankly, I don't know the radius. It's a little bit more than 2, so I'm just going to take a guess and say it's about 2.3. If this were a question on a quiz or a test, I would be more specific. There wouldn't be any ambiguity about it. You just have to guess on this one. Everything else is the same, though. The only thing that's confusing is I don't even know if I have the right radius, but I know I'm in the neighborhood. So I'm guessing it's 2.3. Put that in as something squared. The whole point on this one was to make sure you realize that when you clean this up, it's x plus 3 squared. Plus, on this one, you don't need the parentheses. And then 2.3 squared is 5.29. And real quick, before 7 minutes, the center is -3, 0. And the radius is the square root of 5.29, which I'm guessing is in the neighborhood of 2.3. And that's that. Oh, got completing the square. Thought I was finished. Completing the square. Remember, completing the square is half the middle term squared. Half the middle term squared. That sounds unusual, but I'm going to turn this into a 3-term by taking what will eventually become the middle term, dividing it by 2. Make sure you put it in parentheses. The term that completes the square is 225. That means this factors into x plus, in this case, half the middle term squared. And if you don't believe it, you can FOIL that back out. And you'll find out that it equals x squared plus 15x, and again, and then plus 225, which is x squared plus 30x plus 225, which is what I had up there originally. Same thing over here. I'm going to take half the middle term and square it. I have no idea what that equals, but I know it's going to be positive. You always add this number because it will always be positive once you square it. 0.5625, and that means I know this will factor as y, in this case, minus half the middle term. And if you don't believe that, you can FOIL it out. Look at this last problem. The first thing I need to do on this one is I got to get rid of this -7 or -7. So I'm going to move it over. I can't just make it go away. And then I'm going to have a new space here that I'm going to add half the middle term. So my new 3-term is here. And then I still have this -7 out here. So I'm only focusing on this group here. And I'm going to take half the middle term. That's the number that completes the square. So I'm going to add 9. Technically, if you were doing this problem, you would actually have to subtract a 9 out here. There's nothing wrong with doing that. It's actually what I would have to do, but typically this would be more of an equation, so I would have to add it to the other side. I know that this 3-term here is x plus 3 squared, and then technically I have that -7, but because I subtracted a 9, I'm just going to call it -16. What I would do with this more, if I were continuing, is I would actually add 16 to both sides, take the square root, and I could actually solve that equation. And that's that for real this time.